Well, welcome to another installment of our Art Discourse speaker series during the third annual Fort Lauderdale Art and Design Week. If you didn't know, Fort Lauderdale Art and Design Week is a hybrid self-guided discovery tour of the arts throughout Greater Fort Lauderdale and Broward County with in-person and virtual events, including our Art Discourse speaker series here, where we bring brilliant creative minds to our community and give them front row access for free to artists, curators, photographers, and various arts professionals to highlight the incredible work that they do on a daily basis during this 1 week of art here in Fort Lauderdale and Broward County. And this talk and speaker series is made possible with support and sponsorship by Los Olas Capital Arts and Los Olas Capital Advisors, and we graciously appreciate their support. But without much further ado, we have a very talented and iconic photographer who has participated with us previously last year in Art Fort Lauderdale. You might recognize and remember. We're going to join Giano Currie as he presents a case for why photography is considered art with an intro to his work and his new series entitled Exploring the Human Body, the Muse, which accompanies with historical documentation. And he'll also discuss innovation in photography and what he has planned for 2021. So without much further ado, we bring you Giano Currie.
Hi guys, welcome to the talk. I first of all want to thank the host of this evening, Art and Design Fort Lauderdale. I know a lot has changed in the art world. I think everyone has had to deal with some change in their lives, but I'm really happy that I was invited to this talk. And I am very excited to delve in deep into particularly conscious wealth and what that is and what I'm trying to achieve with that concept, as well as my photography, what I've done in the past, give some tips in regards to if there's any photographers listening, but to delve in deep a little bit in this virtual talk. So let's start. As you can see, I'm in my apartment. Those are some of my artworks. I'll be touching on one in a second. And just to note, I have a little dog walking around, so she might bark once in a while. I hope you guys don't mind. So let's start off. Capturing conscious wealth. A little bit about myself. My name is Giano Currie. I am a fine art photographer. I've been doing particularly fine art photography for around, professionally for around 5 years now. Prior to that, I was my background was in marketing and advertising. I also have a master's in communications. I'm very fortunate to have had that track in the beginning prior to starting a career in the arts, simply because communication is a very important tool that you need to promote your art and to communicate a message, to communicate particularly your vision as an artist that I'll also be touching on. Before we start, my website is daretodream.co. There you can see most of my work. You won't be able to find everything there. Some of the works I'll be showing tonight are extremely new. There's a lot of work that I've done during COVID, what I'll also be touching on, as well as some of my work that you will also be able to find in my shop that is for sale. So definitely check it out. Follow me on social media and at Giano Currie. I already touched on, so a little bit about myself. This is a self-portrait that I did during COVID. In the beginning, it was very weird. I'm a photographer that works a lot with muses, with people. I'm in the studio a lot, and everything was closed. Engaging with people, shooting with people wasn't really possible. So I started looking at myself as a muse. And particularly in my style of photography, I won't say that it was easy to shoot yourself, but if you have a little remote, and you play around and you have patience, and this is what I got. And I'm very happy how it came out, simply because it was one of the first self-portraits that I did of myself which I think is really important if you're a photographer or a painter or any type of artist, is to self-reflect. And I think every artist at one point needs to self-reflect and use your medium to represent yourself. So I consider myself a conceptual photojournalist. Now, what is a conceptual photojournalist? Um, it's I see myself as a photographer that I look a lot. I'm a big political junkie. I follow very closely what happens around me, and through my art, I am able to funnel that and to document that. And I'll be touching on that a little bit later, but that's what I mean with a conceptual photojournalist. I also focus on capturing human form. I am very fascinated um, um, by us as humans, by our shapes, by our forms. And my goal as an artist is to capture that form in unique ways, in abstract ways. And you'll be seeing a lot of that as I sift through this presentation. But these are some of my core values that I offer as an artist, which is conceptual photojournalism and a photographer of the human form. So I think it's always important to state your goals. I think everyone should have goals that they work towards. And for me as an artist, as a fine art photographer, one of my major goals is to become eventually a magnum photographer, which is usually considered photojournalist, but I want to do it in a unique way. I'm a photographer that loves breaking the rules, that loves pursuing different styles, and that loves experimenting. And you'll see that in my work that I'll show you in a little bit. But one of my main goals is to really be able to present my photography, my fine art photography, conceptual photography in a photojournalistic way. The next thing is my vision is to create conscious wealth, and I'll be answering that question, what is conscious wealth, at the end of this presentation. But my vision for my art is to inspire conscious wealth. Now, it's a subjective term. It could be anything, and that's exactly what it means. And just to touch on it a little bit, is basically for you to interpret my photography in a particular type of way that that gives you something. I don't want to give too much right this early. So let's continue. More about my background. I think it's really important. The environment that you grew up, especially as an artist, we take a lot from that. And I'm very proud to mention that I was born and raised, spent a big part of my youth in Suriname, which is my home country. I go back not so often post-COVID, but it's the country I grew up in. And something to note, for those of you that don't know, it's in South America. It's the only Dutch-speaking country in South America. And it's one of the most ethnically diverse countries in the world. Now, what have I taken from that? Growing up in one of the most ethnically diverse countries in the world, with multiple cultures, a mixing pot, and and we all live peacefully. Suriname is also a country, one of the only countries where you can find a mosque and a synagogue next to each other. To go a little bit more in details, it's a church of the Muslim religion is next to a Jewish church, and they use the same parking lot. So I think that's a very notable thing. And what I've taken from that is that I look at the world around me before I create with a very critical eye. We're all aware of 2020. A lot has happened, especially in the US. And coming from a country where with so many cultures, I look at all of that through a very critical eye, meaning that I have a very strong sense of a cultural compass that guides me, especially in my art. And you'll see that in my photography and the concepts I'm trying to push. So let's continue. This is another self-portrait of myself. Again, stating I love breaking the rules. I love, you know, if it's if it's traditional photography to capture something that's ultra sharp with the best lighting, that is not me. I try to go the opposite way. I try to make the eyes work a little bit harder than they used to. So I love breaking the rules, and I consider myself an untraditional photographer. So the beginning, how did I end up as a photographer capturing fine art photos? This is an image of me during my first show, a very symbolic image. As you can see, that is the original piece behind me. And how I stumbled into photography, I was considering myself to be a photographer prior to that already, but not in a way of the fine arts. I was more a photographer. Okay, you need professional portraits. You know, let me take a pretty picture for you, type of photographer. So while in school, while finishing my master's, I was given the opportunity to take a photography class. Now, I didn't have to take this class. I was always a self-taught photographer. I mean, we have YouTube. You don't really need to take a photography class to know how to shoot. But I was always curious. So I knew the fundamentals already, but I just wanted to take the class, you know, because it always, you know, I always felt a certain type of way, you know, self-taught, motivation-wise, it wasn't always there. So I took the class, and that for me was a game changer. Why? Because I discovered that photography could be a way, a medium for me to express myself creatively. And I hadn't found an outlet um, um, prior to that point. So to be able to realize that my camera could be a tool to create art was a game changer for me. And I started with nude photography. The final project I had to take for that class was capturing nude. It was my first nude photo shoot at the time. And I remember that I wanted to break the rules. I wanted to do something different than my peers. So I used red light. Why red light? The color red is a color that unites us all. If you cut anyone open, they'll bleed a red color, despite their political views, their ideology, you name it, their religious beliefs, you name it, we all bleed a red color. And I think that's a powerful it's a powerful color that brings us together. Beyond that, more of the technical aspects when it comes to the human skin, when you use a red hue or a red color against the skin, that gives you a real deep sense. It just puts it in a different type of mood. It makes the picture deep, it makes it emotional, and that's what I really enjoyed and liked to use for my photography. So so that's a little bit about my background. That's how I started. I started with red lights. I soon developed to, you know, like now I'm shooting, for instance, more earth tone colors, more of an earth tone palette that I use nowadays. But I once in a while will go back to the red, and you'll see that with some of my most recent work. So let's get to it. So the big question, can photography be art? Now, I think a lot of people already know that photography can be art, but why? What is the foundation for that? Where did it start? So I want to start at the very beginning. Like, what was the first ever artwork? And I did some research, and the very beginning, this dates back 500,000 years. We're not even talking about present day humans, if you're talking 500,000 years ago. And the first type of art was abstract. And what intrigues me of abstract abstract art, it was carved, geometric forms were carved on a stone. They believe it was done with a shark's tooth. But this, touching on abstract art means that you're dealing with with something you don't understand. It comes from deep within. And I think abstract painters can relate to this a lot. It's emotional, it's internal. So that was the foundation. Um, um, I'm not sure if I can say the people that carved this, but while I would carve, the people that carved this, they didn't even know why they were carving it. That the concept of art wasn't even formed yet. They didn't even know what they were. But to go deep into the psychology, this was a big change and a big foundation of where art comes from, especially considering 500,000 years ago. Then we move further along. This is a little bit more known, but everyone knows of this of cave drawings, and this to me adds the second layer of the foundation, which is storytelling, communications, passing information along. And I think that's present day art. That's very important. I'm going to touch on that a little bit through the journalism in the fine arts. But a second part of the arts was storytelling and passing that along. So the third part, and really one of my favorites, I've also created art based on this concept, was the Venus of Willendorf. And this was the first time that archaeologists had discovered artworks that were touching on beauty. Now, the Venus of Willendorf is considered, it's a female, it's considered a shrine towards fertility, for good luck. And they also say that men used it as enjoyment as well. That's also a speculation. But for me, this means that they touched on beauty. This was the first time, and no matter how you see beauty, beauty is very subjective. But this touched on beauty. How can we make something look good? And I think that's, in a way, also an element of art. Beauty can also be something that intrigues you, that stops you, which doesn't particularly have to be beautiful in the common sense. So let's go to the beginning of photography now. Now, prior to fine art photography, the only pictures that were taken were more for commercial purposes, to sell goods and services, and also for photojournalism. Oh, there's a new station. Let's take a nice picture of that. And these are classic images. This was the very early days of photography. But this was pre-fine art. Now, who discovered and what made images? When did the shift happen? So the shift really happened with this guy. They say he's the grandfather of photography, and Alfred Stieglitz. I've done tremendous research on him as well, but what made the change happen is that this person in particular really promoted art as a artistic medium towards museum collections. Now, if art's going to survive in any way, it's going to be through museum collection. I'm sure you all have visited museums, maybe seen mummies. With those organizations. Not if we didn't have museums, we wouldn't have the people that take care of our, especially historic art. And that's also communication in a way, because that's information. That's how we learn from our past, through art. So I was really the key person that made art a visual medium. Now, the deeper meaning behind that is, what makes fine art photography? The difference between a regular picture, a journalistic image that focus more on reality and action, that the person wasn't even aware the image was taken, in terms compared to a fine art photo, is that fine art photography starts with the artist. It's not the camera, it's not the skills, it's simply what is the vision behind the shot. And the vision comes from the artist. So if you consider yourself a fine art photographer, it starts with the vision. What is the concept you're trying to convey to your audience, to the viewer? So with that concept in mind, that is the soul basically of fine art photography, is the vision behind the artist. So if you're looking at two images, try to always ask yourself, what was the vision behind this image? What did the artist think? What did the artist, how did the artist envision this shot to be perceived? So intro to my photography. Now we'll delve in a little bit deeper into my different styles. The first one I really want to touch on is called The Bow of God. This was really one of my first works. This set me on a course. Canby, sorry. This set me on a course. My dog is named Canvas, by the way. So the bow of God, what does the bow of God mean? My vision behind this particular shot, it's been produced on metal as well. That's also, that's a whole nother talk, but the material that you produce on can also tell a message. But the bow of God, to me, I see a man as an arrow, and I see a woman as the bow to that arrow. And when you shoot an arrow takes off, it flies, it soars, it hits its target, its intended target. But the arrow would not be able to fly if not for the strength of the bow, if not for the strength of the woman. So this piece to me was really in respects to the women in my life and women all over. Instead of female touch compared to a man, and vice versa as well too, is very important. And this was really an ode to the women, the special women in my life. So let's continue. That was my first artwork. The human body, as well as the muse. So a big part of my photography, as I mentioned in the beginning, is capturing the human physique, the human form in abstract ways, in ways that haven't been envisioned yet. And that's really one of my core goals. And to start off, this is part of a collection called Meandering Form, linked to the way you have rivers in the jungle that meander and make curves. So I really wanted to capture that while looking at the human form. I also consider myself a photographer, not of people and things, but rather of nature. Us as humans are as much a part of nature as nature is a part of us. We're alive, we breathe, we grow, we heal ourselves. And those are really elements that I focus on, of capturing not people, but rather nature. This is one of my newer works. I haven't particularly, it's so new, I haven't particularly thought of a name yet. But there's two ways of capturing the human body. There's one where I work with more lighting and where I focus on more background, and another way where I tend to sculpt with shadows and paint the highlights of a person's outline with light, making the human body abstract. I want the viewer, when glancing at my work, as I mentioned at the start of this talk, to really work a little bit, to figure it out, to play with the artwork. What am I looking at? And this is some of the new studies I've been doing in those terms. Moving along from to the muse, something I discovered along the way early on was it's also important, at least for me as a photographer that captures mostly people, the muse is an important part. And with the muse meaning the person that is going to be your canvas to your artwork, your blank slate that you're going to create something with. I think it's critical for the artist, if you're a photographer, to have an understanding with your muse. I think one of the tips I would give to photographers is to do at least, I think, a good collection to get enough. The muse is very important, and to get the most out of a muse, I think requires at minimum 3 to 4 sessions of shooting to really explore. The first time, it's discovery. The second time, you kind of know what you want. The third and fourth time, you know exactly what you want, and you're gonna perfect it. So consider your muse really as your canvas, and really try, if your muse believes in your vision, you're gonna get better pictures because they are as much as part of the art as you are. So how to capture memorable photos? As I mentioned before, it's critical to do more than one sessions. Another critical thing to capture good photos is for your models and your muses to be at ease. And that means setting the right mute with the music, nothing too vulgar, not using vulgar words, using very soft words, as well as feeding and providing drinks to your models. Every shoot I go into, doesn't matter how long or short it is, I always bring small snack and something to drink, you know, because hangry is really a thing, and you're gonna see that in the camera. So to touch on my most latest collection titled Slate, that really delves deep into, if you look at something very minimal, if you look at it long enough, they say part of you will be reflected back. And I think that's true. If you look at, for instance, abstract paintings, very minimalistic, if you look at it long enough, you'll meet yourself at one point. And that's really what I wanted to push with this Slate collection. So these are some of the Slate collections where I really try to engage with how can I defragment the human body? How can I create something with the human body where you'll have separate parts, but your mind looking at it is going to put it together? This collection is also available. It's a 12 by 12 inch frame, so great for an apartment. And you can find those on my website under prints. Exploring conceptually. Now this is something that really excites me, because beyond the visuals, the concept, the idea is really what drives something. It's what makes you excited. Is what communicates. And I more than often spend a long time developing my concepts, sometimes even years. So touching on concepts, some of the things that I invest a lot of time in is geopolitics. I'm a big history buff. I just love information, and I love to know what's going on in the world around me. So I tend to use that and reflect it back through my art, with the goal of historically documenting a particular instance in time and putting that in an artwork in a fine art way. So when I mention fine art photojournalism, that's the concept I meant. If we look at art throughout the years, we touched on museums earlier, the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, they created art, and art teaches us a lot about the past. And through my photography, I want to do the same. I want to capture moments and tell stories in ways that capture a particular moment in time, documenting history in a way. So we've all been through a hell of a year, a hell of a roller coaster of a year last year. You know, not a lot has changed in 2021, but still it was very fresh and new. And I believe in 20 years, just like the Dark Ages, we'll see a particular style of art. You know, almost every artist takes from their environment and puts that in their work, and we'll see a unique style of art that has been created in this era. And I'm sure we've all seen some COVID-inspired art already, but it'll really bring in a genre, an era of art many years from now. So starting about showing more of my conceptually focused artworks. This was an artwork I did in early 2019, I believe, and it's called Figuring Things Out. And the concept is really showing respect to an artist I really admire, who is Andreas Gursky. And I really wanted to capture a particular style of leadership that the world had at that instance. I could say more authoritarian, but I wanted to put the top leaders at that particular moment in time all in one room. And I'm not gonna call out names, but you can, by looking at the image, you can probably see who they are. And they're all in one room, and they're looking at a big blue abstract, artwork. I call it the big blue unknown. And this was a very uncertain time that I took this with, and this is one of my pieces as well. Here's a more close-up version, and it's called Figuring Things Out. The question is, what are they figuring out? This is also an artwork. This was shown last year during Fort Lauderdale Art Fair, and it's called This Is America. This also, a lot of symbolism in this work. This also captured a particular time in America. And it's a lot of details in, but just to highlight a couple, there's 12 bullets in total, which can lead to time, the 12 hours of time, or it could also symbolize the 12 apostles. Delving a little bit more into the bullets as well. Americans love their guns, period. I don't think that's going to change. Of course, the two eyes, the two coins over the eyes goes back to Greek mythology. The gold also symbolizes capitalism. Here is a more close-up version. And this artwork is produced on metal, which is one of my ways of producing as well, and works well for certain type of artworks. This is America. This is one of my most recent artworks, but this one is really, this really touched me in a way. And this was really a vision I had of, you know, last year I experienced so much hate, so much rage last year. And I wanted to put that on in art. I wanted to create some type of artwork that would express rage. And I think my two muses nailed it. And it's also titled Remus and Romulus. And for those of you that don't know the story of Remus and Romulus, those were two twin brothers. And it's said that their story led to the founding of the city of Rome. One killed the other, and the one that killed became the first emperor of Rome. Now, which one? You know, which one killed which one? You know, when I, especially when I try to paint a picture of a very conceptual art piece with particularly an issue between two polarized sides, I always try to put balance in my work. You'll never be aware of my personal opinion. You'll find two opinions there, and it's always up to the viewer to decide which road to take. But the goal is always to invite two opposing sides into the conversations by having a balanced image. So this is Remus and Romulus. This was created last year. It's a close-up version. And this artwork was also published a day prior to the US elections last year. I think it was a relevant time to publish. This is has been one of my largest ever productions in terms of photography. It required 12 models and actors. I had a team of 3 people. It took almost 3 months to develop, as well as almost 7 to 8 hours to actually capture this shot. So a lot of work was put into this. Props to the HGAP Studios, who afforded me the space. It's a great studio if you're a photographer. Definitely check them out. Great prices there in Wynwood. But this image is the garden, and the particular moment I wanted to document with this piece was really around the time when there was a very controversial issue concerning the woman's right to choose in regards to abortion rights. And I wanted to put that in perspective. Now, this has 2 sides. You have a Native girl that's pregnant being analyzed by men. And it's 2 sides. It's a beautiful thing. Life is a beautiful thing. But having the right to choose and deciding for yourself, for your own body, is also a very important thing. And I wanted to put those 2 things in perspective. There's a lot of symbolism in this work. As you look at the table, movements, it's also 12 people in total. So this is it's really a piece that I'm very proud of. It's a very large piece as well. But this is one of the largest scale projects that I've done as I'm working towards the next. This is a close-up of the piece, the garden, and it was created in 2019. So innovation, again, going back to the beginning, I love to experiment. I love to create images that are not normal. My biggest fear is being normal. So I look a lot at innovation and different ways and techniques that I can use to bend the rules, to break the rules, to make new rules, to make a new look, to make a new style. So for me, innovation is very important. And this is a series. It's called Vitruvian Woman. This is the first edition. It's really a part of that. Now, we live in a digital era. Nobody's going to tell me that, oh, you should post straight out of the camera. I do appreciate that, and I do that with some of my collections, but having the modern day tools, you should use it. You're a modern artist. So this is really a particular technique that I've used of congesting multiple images, and through those multiple images, creating form through that. So it's you can also consider it as more abstract photography, but let me tell you, it's extremely hard to take hundreds of images and process those in a way where you form a new body, a new form. So these works are very special to me. This particular one is called Vitruvian Woman, that has been inspired by the Vitruvian Man by Da Vinci. This is a modern day one in a sense. This is the sister to the Vitruvian Woman, Venus of Willendorf, that I mentioned in the beginning. And this also focuses on processing images in a way where multiple images form. I don't know if you remember the Venus of Willendorf statue. I wanted to create that in a modern sense. And as you look closely, you do see the form of what looks like a female. This is another one. This works with a different style of color, different palette. And this is called Fire and Love. There's two collectors of these that own these pieces, particularly in Suriname. And why it's called Fire and Love, there's a particular flower in Suriname that's called Fayalobi, and literally translated, it means fiery love. And I wanted to recreate a sense of a flower. Flowers have a lot of symbolism as well, but I wanted to use the human form. So this is one of my favorite as well. Close up. And this is on metal as well. And the metal really gives you depth in these images, particularly if you're under the influence. It really plays with the eyes. So going into 2020, which has been a very unique year for my art. Again, I couldn't go to the studio. I couldn't shoot with people. So that really pushed me to innovate even more, especially with different techniques. And I can't wait to show you the different ways I've been able to capture and innovate my art. So this piece is called Lincoln. It's on view at the Miami Art Society Gallery. I highly suggest for you to check it out. And this also played with a lot of emotions, a lot of things that I experienced last year, especially with looking at the U.S. And I wanted to reflect that in an artwork. Civil unrest, a lot that was happening. I wanted to create a piece that would take an iconic American icon, if you will, and kind of, as you look in the background, it looks like it's burning, something has exploded in the back. I really wanted to put that in perspective, again, focusing on some type of a balance. So this particular image has been taken out of camera. You know, I've used different techniques and ways of creating atmosphere in unique ways. So close up. As an artist, I also, you know, I love to not tell as much, to not reveal as much, and have the viewer. I will just open up the door for you, and you as the viewer will walk in and finish the rest. So this one, I hope you guys can see it. This is a beautiful piece as well too. This is called MLK, obviously considering Black Lives Matters, which I've bore witness myself last year, and what recently happened in the Capitol. You know, this is kind of an ode to that. It's somewhat abstract. You won't immediately see what it is. But this is a very special piece to me as well too, highlighting a very iconic statue that's just huge. This is liberty. You know, more and more, a really important thing is having your own freedom and liberty. And the Statue of Liberty is a very iconic symbol for that. And this was created in the same way, again, creating atmosphere, using a very deep color and giving my images depth without revealing too much. This is Liberty. And these are beautiful images when seeing it up front on the best fine art paper. They're beautiful. This is one of my favorite as well too. It's called Atom. Again, this is one of the styles that was created in 2020. This is where I use a two-tone palette white and red. This has also almost been taken straight out of the camera. And this really, again, shows two sides. You know, red obviously could symbolize blood. You know, it's been pretty rough the last couple of months to a year. You know, a lot of bloodshed, a lot of people have died. But again, pointing in what direction, I don't know, but hopefully optimistically pointing towards the right direction, reaching for an optimistic tomorrow. Close up. This was also taken in 2020. This is David, the story of David. Particularly, it's a statue that I think Da Vinci sculpted, one of the largest statues at the time. And it's basically David, if you don't know the Old Testament story of David and Goliath. This statue embodied David right after he had, I think, killed Goliath, had won. And this is him proudly standing over the body of Goliath. Again, showing the two-form palette, red and white, and really taking a part of history and putting it in a modern context to that carries weight, but that also carries optimism. Close up. And this, again, is a new technique I've been developing. This is the thinker. This is more, in a way, internal, you know, having pain, having shed blood, you know, and very deep in thought. I love this sculpture in particular because, you know, it symbolizes thought. It symbolizes internal thinkering. It symbolizes consciousness. And this is also one of the newer styles of mine. Close up. And these are beautiful on print. Finally, coming to the end, a little bit more optimistic. Things are starting to look up. This is part of a somewhat different collection called Corner of My Sky. It's an iconic icon. Looks beautiful on print as well. I'm trying to see if I can show you guys the print. Don't see it around. But this looks towards the future. It looks, it's reaching for better times. It's reaching for a better future. And this is really what I wanted, the last image shot I wanted to leave you guys with, is with optimism. We live in a beautiful time, especially if you're creative. We have amazing tools. We have amazing ways of reaching out to people and having as many people as possible see your work. If you're an artist, put it out there. And innovate, you know, go in your laboratory and see how you can do things different. At least that has been a big part of my career as an artist, and I love it. A little close up. It has little details, so it's a very cloudy image with some details, minor details that you can explore when looking at it. So coming to my final question, I hope I'm good on time. What is capturing conscious wealth? So for me, conscious wealth is in photography. I think a good image always hides and tells a story. It tells a story to an extent, but it always hides something. And consciousness comes in by identifying one of the core things that you do bring to the forefront, and the consciousness is then how you finish that. So, you know, as a viewer, I think we're the ones that finalize, that bring an artwork to the end. And with my photography, by not revealing too much, but giving you just enough that you can finish the rest, I hope that I can engage with you and give you conscious wealth in that sense. So that's what I mean with conscious wealth. I hope you've seen most of it in my photography. There's a lot more. There's a lot more coming. Definitely give me a follow on social media. I'm very active on Instagram. I am also a commercial photographer, or if you want something creative, you can do a commission as well. But reach out to me. I'm highly engaged online, and you can also check my website for some prints that I sell as well. As well, if you want to see my larger pieces, reach out to me, and I'll guide you to the galleries that represent me.
Amazing.
Q&A.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank
That was,
you.
that was enjoyable. I do have a first question. A buddy of mine said he likes your lighting in your room. What do you use for your lighting on your Zoom room? And the first picture, what kind of lighting setup do you use for your photography of the self-portrait?
Oh, the self. So does he mean the lighting right now?
That too. I was actually asking about the lighting right now, but he was asking about the lighting in the self-portrait on the first picture.
Okay, the first picture. The lighting right now is literally like just a spotlight, man.
Nice.
It's literally just I angled it to be on top of me, but those lights, the spotlights, are more for the artworks. But coming to the first image was this one, right? It's the bow of God. Like this image was basically lights I got at like a Home Depot. No lie, you don't need you don't always need the best equipment. Just be creative with it. But this one in particular, which one of my earlier works, were really like home improvement store lights, to be honest. But I would suggest, if you're looking for good lights, that won't break the budget too much, based on your camera, get Godox is a good brand, but get strobe lights. I've recently been I've used both. I use constant light and I use strobe lights as well. But if you're looking for that crispy sharpness, powerful light in one instance, get a good strobe light that you can then, I don't have it around me, but you can either use it on camera. But what I do, I get the small strobe lights, I get a receiver that I put on the camera, another one that goes on the light. On the strobe light, you buy a stand, a small and a tall one, and then you can buy a soft box that you can put on it. But a small strobe light will go a long way.
Amazing. What would you suggest to an aspiring or passionate photographer, somebody that's doing it more as a hobby, that would like to do it more professionally, that's just starting off, at home, maybe making a few prints for friends and family? How could they go from transitioning from a few prints to printing on metal and printing on larger scale and producing some of the level of work? How is that evolution, would you suggest, for an aspiring photographer?
Yeah. So for me, I really got moving by I promised myself something when I gave myself a project. I told myself, okay, at one point, it was a while back, but at one point I told myself, okay, you're gonna post an image, an artwork, whatever, you're gonna post one every day. And not for social media, but just for yourself. And it was at a point where I could be in a restaurant with some friends, and I, it would be maybe 10 p.m. and I was like, hey, I gotta go home, I gotta go post. So it really got serious, but that'll get you moving and get your process moving. I think art, the best advice I've gotten from other artists is you need to create every day. Like every single day you need to create. So that's more of the motivation and rhythm part. The way I started is, I didn't know how to, to engage with galleries either. I didn't really know in the early days how to start, but it was really, I was talking about it. I was telling people, hey, love to show in a gallery. I would love to show my art. And one day, one of the people I went to school with, she told me about this gallery. And I reached out to the gallery. I showed them my work. Um, they told me the works that wouldn't work, but they did select one or two works. This one was one of them that they did want to show. And that was a group show, I believe. And that's how the ball started rolling. But uh, the shift from me being able to believe in myself that I was an artist, that I was in the industry, was really by meeting my peers, by meeting other artists, by talking with other artists, because they get you. Your family, your friends, they support you, but they won't always get it. I mean, a lot of my friends and family, like, it might look nice to them, but they don't get why I'm doing it. So is to really start engaging with your peers, with other artists, because they get it. And it feels really good for you to be able to talk and talk about the things you're thinking, to engage with ideas, but also issues you might be having, because they get it. So definitely engage with find your other artists and engage with them.
Amen. Well said. And last question. You've exhibited as a photographer at a high level in Miami. What was your experience like last year during Art Fort Lauderdale, the art fair on the water?
Mm-hmm. Art for Lauderdale was great. Again, met so many great artists and the team from Art for Lauderdale as well. I love the concept. It's I love the concept of the waterways and taking taxis. That really made it an adventure in a way, and art should be an adventure. But the thing I really loved most was the way it was, how it set itself apart. I mean, taking a water taxi, I mean, you don't do that every day. So that's really, that was a great element and a great way to set it apart from the rest. And as an artist, I think it was great, simply because I was able to engage with other artists, maybe not particularly as many from Miami, but a lot of, artists from more around Florida. So I really love that.
Amen. Well, we were glad to have you participate. We were glad to have you
Thank you.
participate in the after parties as well. And I remember having lively discussion with some of your fellow peers and contemporaries. We were glad to have you, my friend, one of my oldest friends who's an aspiring photographer. I was glad he tuned in and learned some things. And so we appreciate you sharing with us.
Thank you.
And it was great to see your artwork in one of these, $8 million mansions. So if you have an $8 million mansion and you're listening to this and you want to exhibit Giano's work, I know a guy. So awesome. We appreciate you sharing. Please reach out, connect, engage, and follow Giano. And we look forward to hopefully being able to exhibit Giano's work again next year in Art Fort Lauderdale in the future and doing this all again. And we appreciate you guys tuning in and your support of the arts.